Well, hello, and good evening or good afternoon or whatever it is, wherever you happen to be. Today I'm going to talk about rational emotive behavior therapy. This form of therapy was developed by Albert Ellis in the 1960s. Originally, he called it rational therapy because he wanted people to think more rationally, to live rational lives, and he believed that irrationality was the cause of all of human suffering, that the reason people were neurotic and depressed and anxious and had significant problems was because of their irrationality. And so he believed that irrationality needed to be eliminated in order to help people live more effective, more functional, less neurotic lives. Well, he then later on in the 1970s realized that emotions are important. We are not Mr. Spock from Star Trek. We are not computers. We are not automatons. We are human beings and we have emotions, and emotions are not necessarily bad things. Emotions can be very important. Emotions can be very functional, and we need to recognize emotions. And so he changed his therapy from rational therapy to rational emotive therapy with the idea that there are emotions that are positive and emotions that are helpful and emotions that are life enhancing, and then there are other emotions that are dysfunctional and emotions that are incredibly problematic. And so the idea was to use rationality and reason to help us experience the positive emotions in our lives and to help us eliminate or at least diminish the negative emotions in our lives. Then in the 1980s, he realized that emotions and thinking were only two of the three important things in in humanity and human psychological functioning, and that we needed to include some behavioral techniques. We need to focus as well on behaviors, what people are doing, the reinforcers in their lives. And so he figured that adding reinforcement theory, adding theories focusing on behavioral control and behavioral modification would also be useful. And so it became rational emotive behavior therapy in the 1980s. And it remains REBT even to today. Well, Albert Ellis's view of REBT and rational emotive therapy and rational emotive therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy is exactly what we would expect in a growing science. That is, as we develop and as we come to understand things, we are going to change our perspective and we are going to change what we are doing and alter our functioning. Albert Ellis believed that human beings are at nature scientists. That is, we have the capacity through observation, through rational thinking, through experimentation to to improve the quality of our own individual lives. And so the idea is for individuals to become individual scientists, not just in the laboratory, not just in their work, but also in their lives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a presentation that I have done on rational emotive behavior therapy. And I hope that it is helpful for you in terms of helping you understand the basics of REBT. So we are going to start the slide here, and I'm going to then um, let me go here and I'm going to share the slideshow with you. So here is the slideshow on REBT. Albert Ellis came up with three REBT insights that he believes that we should pay attention to in therapy as well as in our own lives. REBT insight number one. I'm going to read this to you, although I don't like to read, but I'm going to explain. Basically, REBT insight number one is that it is not what happens to us alone that determines our feelings. It is our thinking, our beliefs about what happens, which also contributes to our feelings. That is, we are not made unhappy by the actions of others. We are made unhappy by what we tell ourselves about the actions of others. Somebody treats us badly and we feel bad because of it. Well, Albert Ellis says that is absolutely absurd. That is absurd. We're not feeling badly because the person treated us badly. We're feeling badly because of what we tell ourselves about what the person says. So the first REBT insight that we need to help our clients understand and that we ourselves need to understand is it is our thinking, our beliefs, what we tell ourselves that, in addition to what happens, causes us to feel bad. If something crappy happens to us, that does not make us a crappy person. So the first REBT insight is that it is not what happens to us alone that determines our feelings. Certainly, what happens to us, if we find ourselves with the gun pointed at our head, we're going to feel anxious and we're going to feel nervous and we're going to feel tense and we're going to, oh my God, I don't want to die. That is normal. That is typical. There is something out there called reality, and somebody's pointing a gun at our head, and we don't know if they are going to harm us or not. So we have a good reason to feel anxious and nervous. But our telling ourselves this is awful, this is horrible, this is terrible, this shouldn't be happening. Well, the fact is, it is happening. The fact is, it we don't like what's happening, but as long as we awfulize, it's awful. As long as we should on ourselves, it shouldn't be happening. We cannot think our way out of it, and we cannot keep ourselves in a good state of mind. The second REBT insight number two, that is after we help a client, after we help our client understand REBT insight number one, that is we teach them, we encourage them, we help them develop REBT insight number one. They say, okay, it is not the fact that my parents are loud, obnoxious, horrible people that makes me feel bad. It is what I tell myself about my parents being loud, horrible, obnoxious people that makes me feel bad. So, REBT insight number two is very simply, although our beliefs may have been formed in the past, that is, we have our beliefs because of what has happened to us in the past. I believe what I believe because of my experiences. I believe what I believe because of what has happened to me. So, because our beliefs have been formed in the past, we are not, because of this, we continue to re indoctrinate ourselves with them now in the present. That is, in the past, I came to the belief that people should treat me fairly. And so when somebody doesn't treat me fairly, I say to myself, that horrible person, they should treat me fairly. People need to treat me fairly. It is my right to be treated fairly. I have the God given right to be treated fairly. Nonsense, according to Albert Ellis. Nonsense. We're re indoctrinating ourselves with these beliefs. We continually reinforce these beliefs, and these beliefs are the ones that are giving us the trouble. So we come to understand that our thoughts, our thinking, our behaviors, what we tell ourselves continues to convince us that we are right and every other lousy person out there is wrong. If you don't agree with me, you are wrong because I am right, you are wrong. That is it, over, done with, finished. Nonsense, Albert Ellis says. We're simply re-indoctrinating ourselves with these beliefs and that continue to make us feel miserable. The third REBT insight is that it is only through hard work and practice that we can overcome self defeating beliefs. That is, let me go to that first part. It is only through hard work. Psychotherapy is not easy. A lot of people come into psychotherapy thinking that, well, gee, I'm going to sit, I'm going to talk to somebody for 15 minutes, and I'm going to leave here feeling really good, and I'm going to leave here feeling wonderful, and my life is going to change dramatically. Nonsense. The only way we're going to be able to change our lives, the only way we're going to be able to get rid of our dysfunction, the only way we can improve is through hard work and practice. We need to learn what we're doing and we need to practice it. So you watch Dr. Capoletti's video today. You say, okay, Dr. Capoletti, I'm watching your video. Okay, yeah. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. And then you go and you play your video games or you watch Vampire Diaries or do whatever else you're going to do. And what I have said has just gone out of your head and it is of absolutely no value. If the only time a person is working is during the 50 minutes that they are in psychotherapy, they are wasting their time, they're wasting your time, they're wasting insurance money, they're wasting their money. It is purely and totally a waste. Purely and totally a waste. One needs to work diligently to overcome self defeating beliefs and replace them with more helpful ones. One of the biggest lies of psychotherapy, one of the biggest myths of psychotherapy, and it is an absolute and total lie, is that 50 minutes a week is going to make significant change in an individual's life. 50 minutes with a psychotherapist does by itself nothing. Nothing. Unless the individual is working hard outside of therapy, unless the individual is using the techniques, using the skills, using the things we are teaching them in therapy, nothing's going to happen. They will come back every week and they will feel just as crappy and shitty and awful as they did the week before. Okay? What we want to do with our clients is to help them understand that they need to work hard to make therapy work. So, REBT insight number one, the first thing we help clients understand is that it is their thinking that causes them, in large part, to feel bad. We're not dismissing reality. We're not dismissing that they may have a really horrible life. They may have the worst boss in the world. They may have, $1 million in debt. They may have a wife or a husband who is abusive, either physically, emotionally, or mentally. They may have a really horrible time in their life, but it is their thinking about those things which keeps them trapped in their misery, which keeps them trapped in a job that they hate, which keeps them trapped in a relationship that they despise, which keeps them spending more money than they make and causing themselves to have huge debts. It is their thinking that is at fault. REBT insight number two REBT insight number two, as I mentioned before, is that we continue to re-indoctrinate ourselves. We continue to convince ourselves of the rightness of what we are doing. And that prevents us from doing anything different. It prevents us from examining other ways of looking at things. And REBT insight number three is we need to work hard. This isn't going to come easy. It's not simply popping a pill and the pill makes us feel better. It's not simply using some marijuana, drinking some beer, popping a cold one, guzzling it down. There is no magic bullet. And in fact, people who take antidepressant medications, while it may help to take the edge off their depression, it does not make their life better. And I can attest to that 100% that there are lots of people taking antidepressant medications who continue to be miserable because their life is not going very well. Working hard is necessary. So these are the three REBT insights that we want to help our clients understand. Albert Ellis basically says that there are two basic human tendencies. Freud says the two human tendencies are sex and aggression. And if you've been paying attention recently, you know that Freud is right. Think about Rudy Giuliani and the recent thing with the Borat, with Rudy being filmed with his hands down his pants. Who knows what he was doing? I don't care what he was doing. Or the newspaper, or not newspaper journalist, a journalist for the New Yorker who was caught masturbating in a Zoom meeting. Oh my God, can you imagine anything? So Freud was partially right that sex and aggression are very powerful human motivators. But Albert Ellis said, no, no, no. Freud was a dirty old man. The two basic human tendencies, according to Albert Ellis, are the first tendency is humans have a strong biological tendency to think irrationally. We are irrational beings. Human beings are not born logical. Look at children. Children are not born logical and rational. 3-year-olds, oh, good Lord, having had 3-year-olds in my house, I can tell you that they are not rational and logical. Good grief, no. 6-year-olds are not rational, logical. Teenagers, crap, teenagers are the most irrational, illogical beings I know. They think they're rational and logical, but their hormones are controlling them. Humans are not rational, and it comes from evolution. Rational human beings, rational human beings out in the jungle or in the savannah or in the desert got eaten by the snakes. Gee, I wonder what that animal is there. Oh, I'm dead. Okay. The ones who survived were the irrational ones that said, oh my God, it's a snake, it's a snake. Everybody run, everybody run, everybody run. Get out of here, get out of here. Everybody ran away. They may have run away from 20 bamboo vines, but nobody got eaten by a snake. They may have run away from, 30 different groundhogs, but nobody got eaten by a lion. Okay, so the irrational ones did not get eaten. The ones that were neurotic did not get eaten. The ones that were emotionally volatile, oh my God, everything is horrible. They're the ones that did not get eaten, and they passed their irrational genes on to the rest of us. So irrationality. Human beings have a strong biological tendency to be irrational. The second human tendency is that we also, thank goodness, have a biologically innate ability to think about thinking. We can think about ourselves. We can think about what we do. We can learn to be rational. While we are born irrational, we can learn to be rational. And we have the ability to exercise this power to work to changing the irrational thinking. But being rational takes work. Being irrational comes naturally. Being irrational is automatic. Being rational takes work. It takes effort. It takes us thinking and doing and practicing and using our power to choose to work towards changing the irrational thinking. So Albert Ellis's basic view of human nature is while we're irrational, we have the ability to become rational. The basic cognitive behavior model here is, and I'm going to use my annotation board here, and I'm going to change my annotation to white so that you can see it, and hopefully I can do this. We have an event. The irrational cycle starts with an event. Something happens. We then evaluate that event and determine the goodness or badness of the event. We determine the potential of that event to harm us or help us. We determine whether that event is going to be something that we want or something that we should avoid. And so the event includes not just things, but also people. We evaluate one another. We judge each other. That is that cognitive appraisal. Somebody comes towards me, and I am thinking to myself, is that somebody I need to be afraid of, or is that somebody I am okay with? Is that somebody I need to be careful with, or is that somebody I can not have to walk far away from? Is that somebody I want to see? So I see Dr. Capoletti walking across the courtyard. Oh my goodness, I don't want to talk to him because I'm not doing so well in his class. And so I am going to go someplace else. And so we have this cognitive appraisal about what is going on. This cognitive appraisal then leads to our emotion. We then feel this emotion. We feel this emotion of neutrality. We just kind of feel neutral about it. We feel fear about it. Oh my goodness, I'm afraid that if Dr. Capoletti sees me, he's going to want to come over and talk to me. Oh my goodness. So we experience this emotion. The emotion then feeds back into our cognitive appraisal. I feel afraid. It says, oh my goodness, I really need to get out of here. We then feel even more afraid. Oh my goodness, where is an escape route? Oh, there's no escape route. We then feel more afraid. And so we create this feedback loop where our emotion heightens and it changes our cognitive appraisal, which causes us to then cause the emotion to heighten even further. The emotion then leads us to select a behavior, leads us to then select uh, what our response is going to be. Our response then feeds back to the cognitive appraisal, and we say, "Oh my goodness, I have been able to avoid talking to Dr. Capoletti today. I've been able to get out of the way. I went in the other direction. I went into a classroom. I started talking to a friend of mine. I turned my back. I whatever I did. I did something." Which then I think about, and then that also changes my cognitive appraisal, which changes my emotion, which then all of these things change my cognitive appraisal. And this is what we are talking about here. So, this is the cognitive behavior therapy view of what we do and how we do. Our behavior then alters the event. We get out of the way, we avoid the situation. Or let us take a different situation here. Let's take an entirely different situation. The event is I see somebody I would like to get to know. If I am a heterosexual male, it might be a very attractive woman. If I am a heterosexual female, it might be a very attractive man. Somebody is over there that I would really like to know. I then have this cognitive appraisal that says, "Oh my goodness, they might not like me. They might not think that I am as attractive as I think they are." And then that causes us to become afraid, and we say, "Oh my goodness, what if they say something to me that's mean? What if they say, what if they ignore me? What if they dismiss me? What if they reject me?" And then that causes our cognitive appraisal. We then engage in the behavior of avoidance, which alters our cognitive appraisal, and we then run away. On the alternative, however, the alternative could be we see that person that we really are attracted to, and we then appraise ourselves and we say, there is that person that I am attracted to. Perhaps they will like me. Perhaps they will think that I am attractive too. Perhaps they will think that I am a person that they might want to get to know. And so then we start feeling self confident and we say, I think I'm going to go over there and talk to them because I think that they might like me and they might enjoy my time and they might enjoy my company. And besides, we're in the same class and I can talk to them about the same things. And so we're feeling positive. Our emotion is positive, and I'm thinking to myself, well, we're in, you know, um, counseling theories together, and we can talk about what a jerk Dr. Capoletti is sometimes, or we can talk about how incredibly interesting the class is sometimes. We can talk about, oh my goodness, I will be so glad when this semester is over, won't you? And so we have this positive feedback loop, which then causes us to approach the individual and begin a conversation, which then feeds back to the cognitive appraisal that, gee, I am doing a really good job. So this is the REBT. This is the basic REBT model for the cognitive behavioral appraisal. And this is what we can control. We cannot control the events. You cannot control whether Dr. Capoletti is walking across the courtyard or not. You cannot control whether that really attractive person is is talking to other people or by themselves or not. You cannot control the event. You cannot control to a large extent your emotions because the emotions arise automatically as a result of your cognitive appraisal, but you can control your cognitive appraisal, which then directly controls your behavior, directly controls your emotion, which then causes you to choose a more adaptive behavior, a more adaptive response. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about behaviors, I'm not simply talking about overt behaviors. We are talking both covert behaviors, those behaviors that I cannot see. So, those thoughts that you have, those reactions that you have, those images in your mind that you have. We also talk about overt behaviors. These are the behaviors that I can see. So I see you walking away. I see you smiling. I see you grimacing. I see you, clenching your fist. I see you smiling. These are the overt behaviors that I can see. These are the overt behaviors that are public and available to others. So let's clear this out here for a minute. We'll go on to the next slide and talk about the next aspect of REBT. So in the cognitive behavior model, the REBT model, that we look at complex interactions between these things. I'm not going to go into the slide very much. You can stop the video here, read the slide if you want, but I'm not going to talk about this much because I don't have a whole lot of time. This presentation, by the way, was done for a 4-hour workshop. This is not going to be a 4-hour workshop. Get used to 4-hour workshops. When you get out there and you become a big person, you become an adult, you're going to be attending 4-hour workshops, not 1-hour classes or 1.5-hour classes. You're going to be attending all day, 6-hour all day workshops. I know it sounds really gross. It really is, and it can actually be kind of fun. So you just kind of get used to it and you'll be okay. This is what big people do, and you'll do quite well when that happens to you. So anyways, you can read this slide a little bit later for you. But this is the CBT model adapted by Beck, the CBT model adapted by Beck, which is kind of useful in understanding the how REBT CBT works. So we have our core beliefs, which are our schemata. So we have our core beliefs. Coming from our core beliefs are more intermediate beliefs. Core beliefs are those things like people should treat me fairly. An intermediate belief is one of those things like, I expect people to talk to me when I talk to them. So that is an intermediate belief. These intermediate beliefs then uh, translate into these automatic thoughts that we have when something happens. An event occurs, and we have this automatic thought that comes from our beliefs. By examining the automatic thoughts, we can then identify what the core beliefs are that are causing us the difficulties. It is these automatic thoughts that lead to our emotions, our behaviors, as well as our physiological responses: increased heart rate, increased breathing, perspiration, respiration. All those things are caused by the automatic thought. So this is very similar to Albert Ellis's, but Beck focuses on these automatic thoughts as a way of identifying what are the core beliefs that are causing us the difficulties in our lives. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide here. Okay, this is Beck's model, talking about core beliefs, automatic thoughts, intermediate beliefs. Again, you can stop the video here and watch this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I'm not going to read this to you because you're quite capable of reading it yourself. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, this was where I would do the intermediate. Now let's talk about treatment under the CBT REBT model. CBT is a very structured form of treatment. It is a very structured way of providing treatment to individuals. It is not this loosey-goosey, I'm going to come in and just kind of wander around and we're going to talk for 50 minutes and then something magic is going to happen and I'm going to get better. That is not CBT. CBT starts off with assessment. Every single CBT treatment starts with an assessment phase. In class, if we have time, and I'm going to stop whoever's presenting this week, I'm going to stop them because I'm going to teach you some assessment techniques and some assessment devices. Those of you who are presenting, you may want to do this. If you do this, then I don't have to. But what are some assessment devices? What are some assessment techniques that you can do in therapy? I'm not talking about psychological tests. I'm talking about things like the SUDS, the SUDS, developed by Volpe, WOLPE. SUDS, SUDS stands for the Subjective Units of Distress Scale. Look it up if you want to present it. If you don't, I will. It's a very useful, can be done in the psychotherapy session, but every session should have an assessment. Where are we at? What are we doing? How are we feeling? Are we making any progress? So assessment. The aim of assessment is to identify dysfunctional schemata, to identify those dysfunctional beliefs, to identify those irrational ways of thinking that we have. We then want to work on alteration of dysfunctional schema. That is, once we identify what the dysfunctional schemata are, we want to change. We want to change them. We want to make them more functional and help the individual. So CBT is a very active, the therapist takes a very active role in the therapy, not like existential therapy, certainly not like Rogerian therapy. The CBT therapist is actively challenging, confronting, questioning, examining, directing what's going on in the therapy session. Maintenance is the next phase of treatment. Need to continue to practice. Once we have changed the functional schema, the individual needs to practice the change. Practice it, practice it, practice it so that they don't forget it. So they don't forget it. It's kind of like when you leave a lecture. If you don't practice it, if you don't talk about it, if you don't read it, when you come in the following week and the professor says, "What did I say last week?" You go, okay, because you haven't been practicing. You haven't been discussing it. You haven't been thinking about it. You leave class and you say, okay, I'm done with that. I'm all done with that. A week goes by, professor says, okay, what did we talk about last week? And your response is, okay, get that all the time. You give that all the time. So we need to make sure that we are practicing the skills, practicing what we are doing. And then relapse prevention is using booster sessions. Once the therapy is completed, people come back from time to time to get booster shots, to get booster sessions. You know, you need to take your tetanus shot every 5 years, or you lose the protection of the tetanus vaccine. You know, when we get a coronavirus vaccine, we'll probably have to do the same thing. Probably have to take a shot every 6 months or so in order for it to continue work, because we need the booster sessions as needed. So we talk about the assessment and looking at the irrational, and I've talked about this. So the types of irrational beliefs, according to Albert Ellis, are those musts, shoulds, have tos, got to, oughts. Anytime you hear those words come out of the mouth of one of your clients, it needs to trigger you immediately that, whoa, we're dealing with a irrational belief here. Must. There is nothing that you must do. Don't masturbate. Should. Don't should on yourself. Don't should on other people. Have to. There is nothing that you have to do. Everything is an option. Everything is an option. Now you can ignore your boss at work, in which case you get fired. Okay. And you may decide, gee, I don't want to get fired. Therefore, it would be better if I did what my boss asked. That is the rational replacement. Not I have to do what my boss says, but I don't want to get fired. Therefore, it would be better if I did what my boss asked me to. Not I have to do what Dr. Capoletti says, but rather if I want a good grade, it would be better to do what Dr. Capoletti asks me to do. You know, not I have to do the work, but rather if I want a good grade, it would be better not to come into class with a blank stare on my face. Okay? There is no have to. If you had to, then you would do it without question. The fact that you have to force yourself to do it means that it's not a have to, got to, ought, all those, all those. The philosophy of masturbation lies at the heart of all irrational beliefs. Awfulizing, oh, it is awful, it is horrible, it is terrible, lies at the heart of all irrational beliefs. I can't stand it. Oh my goodness, people have, I just can't stand it. Well, yes, you can. You can stand it. And the proof that you can stand it is you are. You're not dead. You're not falling apart. You're still alive. You're still here. Therefore, while you may not like it, you can stand it. You can. I cannot put up with that. Well, yes, you can. The fact that you can put up with it is that you are putting up with it. If you couldn't put up with it, you would change it. If you couldn't stand it, you would modify it. The fact that you don't change it, the fact that you don't modify it, proves that you can, in fact, stand it. And you can, in fact, put up with it. And damnation. Damnation occurs when we say other people are more than 100% bad. That person is more than 100% bad. They are awful. They are terrible. They are the worst person in the world. That is damnation. That is damnation. Okay. Distortions due to irrational beliefs include all or none thinking. It is either all good or all bad. Nothing is all good and nothing is all bad. Nothing is totally 100% awful. Nothing is totally 100% wonderful. And no person. All or none thinking. Jumping to conclusions. That is, because I think it, it must be true. Absolutely not. I mean, come on. I would like that to, maybe I wouldn't like that to be. I don't think I would like that to be true even if it was true. Anyways, fortune telling, predicting the future. Well, I know he's going to reject me. Well, how do you know? Well, I just know it. My boss is going to tell me no. Well, how do you know? Well, I just know it. Well, have you asked him? No. And why haven't you asked him? Because I know he's going to say no. How do you know? Okay, that's fortune telling. Focusing on the negative. Everything has negative, and if you focus on the negative, it's going to make everything worse than what it really is. Focusing on the negative. Disqualifying the positive, saying, well, yeah, there's positive there, but that doesn't matter. The positive doesn't matter. You know, your boss gave you a raise. Well, that doesn't matter. My boss told me I wasn't doing it right, therefore he's horrible. Okay? Disqualifying the positive. Allness and neverness. Nothing is all or never. Nothing is all or never. Okay, well, I guess death is all because once you're dead, you're dead. So, and you're going to be alive in that particular body again. So I guess there are some things that are all and never, but short of that, there are very, very few things that are all or never. And minimization, making things out to be smaller than what they really are. That is, yes, I got an A, but the professor was easy. Yes, I got 100% on my test, but it's not really all that important. Minimization. Other distortions include emotional reasoning. Because I feel it, it must be true. Because I feel awful, it must be awful. Because I feel sad, it must be a no good thing. Emotional reasoning. Labeling and overgeneralization. Labeling is putting a label on something and dismissing it as a label. Um, Personalizing it, taking it personal. My boss hates me. No, your boss doesn't hate you. Your boss just wants you to do your damn job. Okay? Boss doesn't hate you. Personalizing. Phonyism, believing that you are phony because you're not 100% correct, true, because you're not 100% perfect, then you must be a phony. And perfectionism. Oh my goodness, nobody is perfect. Just accept the fact that you're never going to be perfect. The only person who thinks you're perfect is your grandmother. Not even your mother thinks you're perfect. Okay. Your grandmother thinks you're perfect. Don't worry about it. You're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. You want to be the best you can. You want to strive for the best you can strive for. True. Good ideal, good goal, good thing to strive for, but you're not going to be perfect. There are appropriate negative emotions. Now, I don't want you to go away from this thinking that there are inappropriate, that all emotions are bad. Concern versus anxiety. Concern is an appropriate emotion. If you are not doing well in a class, you need to be concerned if you're going to get better. Being concerned causes you to pay attention to those things that are necessary. But when you take concern, add a should to it. I'm concerned about my grade in class and I should be doing better. That produces anxiety. Anxiety is debilitating. Anxiety gets in the way of you doing what you need to do. Concern, appropriate, healthy, causes you to do what you need to do. Anxiety, dysfunctional, not healthy, interferes with doing what you need to do. Sadness versus depression. Sadness, everybody feels sad every now and then. Your favorite dog dies, you're going to feel sad. You didn't get into the college that you wanted, you're going to feel sad. You didn't get the job that you wanted, you're going to feel sad. Everybody feels sad sometimes. However, when you take sad and you add a should, a must, an ought, or an awfulize to this, you know, I didn't get the job and I should have gotten the job, and it is awful that I didn't get the job. Then you get depression. Depression is the result of sadness plus a dysfunctional belief. Eliminate the dysfunctional belief, and depression goes back to being simple sadness, which is an appropriate, healthy, adaptive emotion to have. Okay. Regret versus, by the way, a lot of people take antidepressant medications because they don't want to be sad. Sadness, antidepressant medications are not going to make you less sad because sadness occurs when we suffer a loss. Okay, going back here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Regret versus guilt. When I do something that is not good, I regret it. I say something that hurts somebody and I regret it. I don't want to hurt people. Guilt is when I take regret and I add a should to it. I said something hurtful and I shouldn't have said it. That is guilt. I said something hurtful and I feel bad for it. I want to make amends for it. That is healthy. That is normal. That is adaptive. I said something that hurt somebody and I am a horrible person for doing it. That makes guilt. Guilt, anxiety, depression, guilt interfere with with our ability to respond in an adaptive, healthy, appropriate way. Disappointment versus shame. I don't get what I want, or I am not as good as I want. I'm disappointed. I would have liked it to be better. I would have liked it to be different. Rather than shame, disappointment plus awfulizing, disappointment plus masturbation, disappointment plus I can't stand it produces shame. Annoyance versus anger. Somebody does something I don't want. I'm annoyed. I take that annoyance and I say, that stupid louse, I damnate that person. I say, that person needs to be damned to hell because they shouldn't have done that. That produces anger. Annoyance plus an irrational belief is what causes anger. It's okay to be annoyed. Somebody does something you don't like, yeah, you're going to be annoyed with them. The jerk, the person that, don't do that. But that's annoyance versus anger. Automatic thoughts, again, I'm going to skip through this a little bit. And I'm going to skip through the types of automatic thoughts because I'm very much running out of time here. But you can look at this in the file section of Canvas. I've got all of these identified, all of these defined for you. So we're going to skip this a little bit. We have some assessment forms, as I said. The Beck Depression Inventory is one that I use quite frequently. Beck Anxiety Scale, the REBT Personality Data Form. We have various schema checklists to identify people's schemas. This is an example of a depression inventory. Are you basically satisfied with your life? Have you dropped many of your activities? And so on. This is a basic hopelessness satisfaction with life questionnaire. You can use this at the beginning of a treatment session. Every session, you hand this to your client and say, here, take 2 minutes and answer this. You then compare their score this session to their score last session, and you say, gee, it looks like you're getting better. Or, well, wait a second, things are getting worse. What's going on? This helps you to direct the session. This helps you to direct where you're going in the session. The second phase, changing schemata. Some of the core schema change, number one here, requires repetition. People don't change their schema with one magical phrase, with one magical phrase. They weaken their schemata each time they think and behave differently. So each time they do something different, it weakens the schema a little bit more. And each time they think differently, it weakens the schema a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit at a time, until eventually the schema is altered and changed and is no longer dysfunctional. So we look at changing things a little at a time until we get where the individual needs to be. Okay. Um, Again, theory of therapeutic change in REBT. To a large degree, people create their own psychological disturbance. They make themselves mentally ill. This is a basic fundamental principle of REBT. We don't deny that a person's situation is important. Person's situation is absolutely totally important. But it is not the situation that causes the mental illness. It is the person's reaction to the situation that causes the mental illness. People have the ability to alter their circumstances should they choose to do so. They have the ability to alter how they respond to their circumstances should they choose to do so. You can alter, you're in a class that you absolutely detest. You're not going to change the professor, you're not going to change the syllabus, but you can change your reaction, and changing your reaction will change the way in which you respond, the way in which you view, the way in which you experience the class or the situation or the relationship or whatever. Change your reaction and you will change the situation. um, Again, absolutistic, irrational, dogmatic beliefs are at the foundation of emotional and behavioral disturbance. So the question, according to REBT, the question, why are people neurotic? Why do people experience mental and emotional difficulties? Number 4 here is exactly it. You can stop the video here and kind of write this down if you want to. This nice thing about these videos, you can pause them as you need to. Okay, so working toward internalizing functional schemas to replace dysfunctional schemas is the goal of REBT. You employ cognitive, behavioral, and emotive methods to change, emotional methods to change. I've got a couple of emotional methods that I'm going to share with you next week if we have time on how to change things emotively. Um, continuing this process, therapy is for the rest of their lives. Now, that doesn't mean that they need to see a therapist forever, but rather what they need, what individuals need to do in order to improve their lives is Practice these skills forever. Reading isn't something that you stop doing once you leave the third grade. Adding numbers isn't something you stop doing once you leave the third grade. Practicing these techniques isn't something you stop doing when you leave therapy. You need to continue practicing them and practicing them and practicing them in order for them to continue to improve the quality of your life. Okay, we have different levels of intervention. I'm going to finish this here, but I think this is important. The levels of intervention go from superficial, which includes schema camouflage. What schema camouflage is helping the individual to ignore the schema, hide the schema. We can't alter it. If we cannot alter the schema, then we can help the individual to ignore it, to hide it, to camouflage it, to not make it apparent. We can reinterpret the schema. That is, we can take the schema and we can reinterpret it in another way, see it from another perspective, see it from another point of view. Neither of these change the schema. The schema remains unchanged. What we change, however, is how the individual responds to their schema. They may still believe that professors are talking heads who don't know anything. But schema camouflage is they certainly don't say that in class, and they pretend to agree with the professors in class. That schema camouflage, or they reinterpret the schema to, professors are are misguided. Not that they're wrong, they're misguided. That schema reinterpretation. Then we go to altering the schema. We want to change the schema a little bit. We modify it. We tweak it around the edges. We make some little changes here and there. We encourage the person to change a few things, but we don't alter. But we don't get rid of the schema. The schema stays, but we just alter a little bit. Not all professors are talking heads and idiots. Most are, but not all. That's schema modification. And then schema reconstruction is totally reconstructing the schema. The person develops a brand new schema, a brand new way of doing things. With most marriages where you have conflict, you're going to with either schema reinterpretation or schema modification. You're not going to often get schema reconstruction, and schema camouflage doesn't work in the long term. It works temporarily, it works briefly, but it doesn't work in the long term. So when you're dealing with conflicted marriages, you're looking at either schema reinterpretation or schema modification. Schema reconstruction is really, really hard to do. That is really deep work in terms of working on the schema. So the structure of a CBT session, last thing here, and then we'll get done. In a CBT session, REBT session, the first 5 minutes are spent doing a check-in and review. How did how are things going? How are you doing? Basically just kind of a check-in review of what you're going to be doing for the day. The assessment activity takes about 5 minutes. Let's do the SUDS. How are you feeling today? How are you doing today? What's your level of depression today? What's your level of anxiety today? What are you about? So you do the Beck Depression Inventory. You do the SUDS, the Subjective Units of Distress Scale. You do some sort of assessment activity to see where are we at right now. You then develop an agenda. What are we going to do today? What do we need to work on? What are some of the things we need to focus on? How are we going to then do this effectively? So you spend just a couple of minutes developing an agenda. The agenda is developed in collaboration with the client. They put things on the agenda, you put things on the agenda, and then you decide how you're going to structure it. What things are most important, what things are not so important, and what are you going to address first, what are you going to address next? So you develop an agenda. You then work through the agenda. This is the biggest part of a CBT session is let's start at the top and see how much of this we can deal with, see how much of this we can do, see how much of this we can go through. You then summarize. You spend the last few minutes summarizing. Okay, what did we just do? Has this been effective? Has this been helpful? What do we still have left to do? What are we going to be doing in future sessions? And then you assign homework. You assign homework. Every CBT session needs to end with assigning homework to the individual. And again, we're not going to have time to go over the homework stuff. If this were a real semester where we had more time to do it, I would talk about different homework assignments. I've got examples in the files section of Canvas. If you're interested, you can take a look and review that. But this is about all we have time for today. This is CBT. This is REBT. This is what it looks like. If your therapist, if you're seeing a therapist and they are not doing this, they're not doing CBT. I don't care what they say they're doing. They may say, yes, I'm a CBT therapist. If they're not doing this, they're not doing CBT because they're not doing what Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck say you should do. And they're the ones who invented CBT. They're the ones who invented it. Okay. Um, anyways, this is one of the reasons why CBT is so popular is because it is very structured. It is very structured. It has a format to it. It has a very specific way of doing things. And so a lot of beginning counselors, a lot of beginning students really appreciate CBT because it provides them with an outline of what they need to do. So I'm going to stop here and we're going to finish up right now. By the way, this is Bellagio on Lake Como in Italy. Um, every year I bring students, I bring them here to Bellagio. It's actually a very beautiful little city. We take the ferry from Bellagio to Varenna, and we eat some really good pasta, drink some really good wine, have a lot of fun, enjoy the Italian lifestyle. But this is uh, so I love being here, and so that's why I'm here today. Anyways, have a great weekend or have a great week. Whenever you watch this, have a great whatever. And I look forward to seeing all of you either on Thursday, tomorrow, or Tuesday next week. Bye bye.